the group itself is better and older and more experienced and all of these things. So all of that adds up to, a group that's, like I say, ready to get going and excited to compete.
Ready to get going. That's Sheldon Keefe, head coach for the Toronto Maple Leafs, ahead of tonight's Game 1 against the Tampa Bay Lightning in the NHL playoffs. Joining us now is the one, the only, Rob Conway of BET99. How you doing?
I'm doing very well.
Excited? Nervous? What? How you feeling?
Nervous? No. I'm excited for the city. I'm excited for the fan base to get an opportunity again. They always say if you keep putting yourself in positions to succeed, eventually you will. I don't know.
I like that.
Isn't that the definition of insanity? Keep doing the same thing over and again.
I think that's right. Yeah.
That sounds like a Justin Pooney tweet, actually. One of those motivationals you drop in the morning.
Dude, run Doug.
Can you give us one right now? Do you have one off the top of the dome?
Let me show you the tweet of Doug Gilmour, the killer mentality, man.
He's all in on the Leafs, by the way. But I think
Canada's team,
that's
baby.
a big time.
Canada's team.
So I think we should hit this game this series from a different angle. Maybe certain talking points aren't really being talked about. One of them being that kind of is being talked about a little bit. Which Maple Leaf has the most demons to slay? We keep talking about the Leafs and their demons, first round demons, not being able to get out of the playoffs. Performances in series deciding games. For you, Bobby, who's one player that stands out?
I think Mitch Marner. I just think because of the fact that he's from here. And it's just he doesn't get to go and hide anywhere after the season. He goes immediately and plays golf in Toronto and has to hear about it 365 days a year. Not that Austin Matthews doesn't live with it a lot as well, but he does get to go to Scottsdale, and I don't know very many people who care about what the Leafs do in the first round in Arizona. And other guys, Morgan Riley's been around for a while, John Tavares, sure, but I think Mitch Marner, with being a Toronto native and having friends and family that have supported this team long before he played, and he did too, and to deal with that, I think it's been difficult for him. I think Tavares is as well, being from this area too, but having played in New York for so long, it's not quite the same.
Yeah, you could probably lump a lot of that core into there.
It's John Tavares, unequivocally. Yeah. It's John Tavares.
Really?
The most. He's made it past the first round once in his career. And that was in New York, and they got swept in the next round after that. John Tavares is the guy who signed the big deal, $11 million, the pajama photos, all of that. He's the captain of the team. It's time for him to step up, right? It's time for John Tavares to really take control and take ownership of this team. All the headlines go to Marner and Matthews, as they should, but John Tavares needs to show up in this playoff run. He has to be one of the main reasons why this team makes it out of the first round, because quite frankly, this contract's going to look worse and worse as the years goes on, as he gets older. It's time for John Tavares to show up. Like you mentioned, all the same things about Mitch Marner, about being from this area, 365 days a year. Same thing for John Tavares, but he's the captain of this team. He was supposed to be the missing piece, the missing link, the thing that puts them over the top. They haven't gone over the top yet at all. So John Tavares has all the pressure in the world to show up this playoff.
And now I think the expectation could be a little bit higher if he actually is going to be playing on a wing with Ryan O'Reilly, the second line, which means
less defensive
and he'll need to produce a lot more.
Right, but in fairness, the one year when the Leafs should definitely have got out of the first round, the Montreal series, he went out in the first game with an awful head injury, right? He actually plays quite well in the playoffs. I still have that image of Matthews and Marner after the Montreal series in the room, the heads down, the room was cleared, the two of them just sitting there dejected. Now, was it staged? I don't know.
Of course it was.
But there was so much pressure on those kids. There really was. And now, like we heard Sheldon Keefe there talking, they're older now. They're more mature. That the pressure's on them. But I will say this, goaltenders are weird creatures, right? And I think emotions and demons seep from human to human. So I know Samsonov wasn't there before, and this is his first playoff run with the Leafs, but he's got to be feeling the demons of the past, where goaltenders for this team have not got the job done. They haven't been bad, but haven't been good enough to get out of the first round. So it's not fair, but all eyes are on how is Toronto's goaltending this time around, because they took some big gambles in the preseason in the summer, and one hasn't paid off. One might pay off in this sense.
Yeah, the extra pressure is definitely there, right? If you're one of the two guys to come in, and that other guy who, by all accounts, the organization really wanted to be the number one guy, and Matt Murray isn't available, now it's all on him. But I think based on the way we've seen Samsonov play down the stretch, he did steal a couple of games, albeit in the regular season. I think he's shown that he's more than capable of being a number one goalie in the NHL. It's obviously different. I know once you get to the playoffs and you're playing such a fantastic team like the Tampa Bay Lightning who's been there and done that, but he's shown behind that defense and behind this core 4, core 5, whatever you want to call it, that he can play and he can step up. And so I don't think the demons are there for him necessarily in terms of what's happened with the Leafs. But yeah, it could be creeping in because he's the only guy.
When they say, the playoffs is different, right? Because it gets tighter, it's harder to score,
yeah.
right? Surely then it's easy to be a goaltender in the playoffs.
Yes and no. I mean,
Because the pressure of every goal means so
Pressure,
much.
sure, but it's lower scoring in general.
Yes, 100%. Last night, only one game went over, if you will, when it comes to betting, and it is a tighter game. Your scoring opportunities are smaller, but the moment is bigger all the time, and you're the only player on the ice for the full 60 minutes, and you don't have an opportunity to really let down. And
True.
So it can be mentally tough, I think, a lot more.
And it's moments, right? Like in last night's game, Korpisalo, Lindholm, Lyon, Ottinger, they all made big saves, big moments, right? So that's the key, I think, for Samsonov. The Leafs will always have the scoring, but you're right. I think a lot of it does fall on the goaltender. Okay, let's go to the next one. Which Leaf outside of the core can affect the series the most? So when I say core, let's go Matthews, Marner, Nylander, Tavares. Outside of those guys.
Remove Samsonov as well.
I think O'Reilly would be the biggest one. He was the guy.
But he's not part of the core as far as the contracts.
Yeah, I think no. O'Reilly's got the most,
sorry,
the
gotcha.
biggest impact. I
Gotcha.
think.
Yeah, he can affect the series the most.
He was brought in because he has Stanley Cup pedigree, right? He's a Conn Smythe winner. He is a guy who's been through these battles with St. Louis for years in the Western Conference, and I think he's a guy that there's going to be a lot on his plate. He's going to have to be the guy to shut down Nikita Kucherov. That matchup, to me, is one of the biggest matchups in this series, if not the biggest. How can Ryan O'Reilly neutralize or make Nikita Kucherov's life difficult? If he can do that, the Leafs will win this series very handily. But if he can't and Kucherov gets his, that's a guy that can change games, change series instantly. And I think what Ryan O'Reilly can do on the defense side, John Tavares now doesn't have to worry about that. He can play strictly on offense.
At least for game one.
At least for game one. At least
going to juggle.
If we're looking at it just straight up as it is right now, I think Ryan O'Reilly can be that guy outside the court, have the biggest impact, because he also is going to be taking on probably Tampa's most important or second most important player.
Yeah, and when you're playing against Stars, where they say the best way to shut them down is make them play defense. And I think that first and second line can do that. You throw O'Reilly in the third line now you can throw that third line out against the top line, and it balances out a bit better for the Leafs. I think this is the first time, Rob, in a long time, where the Leafs have a lot of flexibility.
Yeah.
And a lot of different options, but not bad options, really good options in terms of what they can do with the top six and what they can do with the bottom six in terms of the defense as well.
And what is obviously unique to the playoffs, whether it's the NBA or the NHL or anything else, you go in and out of cities constantly, in and out of cities, and you get teams and you get a chance to prepare, you watch them film. This is 2 straight weeks. You have one thing to worry about, and if your guy is to worry about Kucherov, that's all you have to worry about. Eat, sleep, and worry about Kucherov. It's a different beast in that way, and so it is easy. We've seen this with the Toronto teams before, that top lines can be shut down. So Matthews and Marner, that core, they are able to be shut down because you can game plan your entire 2 weeks around doing that. So I think there are guys lower down the lineup, but I think a key player is going to be Luke Schenn. I think in the sense of he's going to play, I think, a role in key minutes late. He's a little slow. If there's a transition 3-on-2 with Point and Kucherov coming the other way, he's in trouble. But in the last minute and a half of a one goal game, he should be out there. And also, if he needs to rough it up a little, we saw he threw it down with Maroon, and if that's necessary, I think he's the guy who's going to be doing it.
Although I think you're going to see a Brody McCabe twosome out there late in a game, in a close
Sure.
game. And Brody is, for me, if he's not considered core, he probably should be. He's going to be out there, I think, for close to half the game. If I'm Keefe, I'm running that guy 27 minutes to 30 minutes a game.
He averaged about that last year.
Yeah, in the playoffs, him with Muzzin, who was great, by the way, last year as well, but obviously not there anymore. So I think Brody's absolutely key because he's such a stable presence back there. But if you're looking at peripheral scoring, I think Michael Bunting could be really important, and Cal Yancroc as well, who played a 20-goal season this year. Real great surprise, and 2.1 million hitting the cap. Those lower lines, I mean, Bunting will likely play beside Matthews, I would think, to start the series at least. Yancroc will be lower down in the bottom six. You get some goals in that bottom six, popping a few here and there. It changes everything.
Yeah, I love the Brody shout. I'm going to go with Jake McCabe, because now he's tasked with being the number one guy with TJ Brody. This guy's played 506 games in his career. Really impressive. He's going to be making his playoff debut, the only Leaf to be making their playoff debut, right? He's never been thrown into that, and he's going to be asked to play the same minutes that Brody has. And if it doesn't work out in the first game, I can only imagine our conversation tomorrow being, Is McCabe the right guy to be in the top pairing with Brody? Should Riley leave Shen and now be put with Brody, or should it be Hall, or should it be someone else?
You're not putting Justin Hall in that position.
I'm just saying those questions will be asked if McCabe can't get the job done in the top pairing, because if you're the top guy, you're playing the majority of the game. And I know you're saying Luke Shen should be out there in key moments, but if Keefe believes in McCabe and Brody, those are the guys that are going to be on the ice.
McCabe's a tough one because, like you said, with the lack of playoff experience, not even just the lack of playoff experience. I mean, you're coming over from a team that had no interest in winning hockey games for a while. So now all of a sudden the intensity's already ratcheted up playing for a team that's going towards the playoffs.
good
Now
point.
you're in the playoffs. And so we'll see how that he reacts to that, because he hasn't really seen that environment. I'm sure he has in his lifetime, but not necessarily in recent history playing for Chicago. So it's going to be tough to see that one, but the support of your co-defenseman is extremely important, and those mixtures are important. It's why I think we saw the lineups there. There's a chance that Riley's playing with Shen because of the responsibility that Shen can have and allow Riley to go. It's just when you're talking about trying to put these pieces all together, I feel like in about 10 minutes in the first period, they're going to all be in a blender,
Yeah.
and who knows?
And it
right?
probably will
That's
change.
just the
Like,
hard part about it.
Sheldon Keefe said, he goes, listen, he was talking about Morgan Riley. He goes, Morgan Riley's going to play up and down the lineup.
Yeah.
So that tells you he's ready to change things, which
Yeah.
can be a good thing. I mean, what's the Sheldon Keefe factor in this series?
That to me is the biggest factor, because you know what you're going to get with John Cooper. John Cooper's a proven Stanley Cup winning coach, right? Can Sheldon Keefe make those in-game adjustments, or those adjustments between games, right? Between game 2 and 3 when you're traveling to Tampa Bay, when you lose last change, can he make those changes to take advantage of those matchups? That to me right there is the biggest factor in this series. Another big factor, in this series is how does Sheldon Keefe manage his lineup? How does he put his best players in positions to be successful? If he can do that and do that effectively, again, that bodes well for the Leafs. But John Cooper is a guy who's been through these things, knows how to adjust on the fly, knows what he's getting from his lineup, and he's a guy also that knows how to use the media to his advantage come playoff time as well. I love that they're playing the underdog card.
Sherms, where are you at with Sheldon Keefe?
Yeah, I mean, listen, we know he likes to chop and change, but last year and the year before that, he didn't trust his bottom six at all. He had to chop and change, right? I think this time around, for the first time, he's got a bottom six he loves, and he knows what works there. Now, you might see an Aston Reese come out at some point. You might see a Matt Nyes go in there, which would be exciting. But generally speaking, he knows who can play what kind of role, all right? And he's got a lot of trust and faith in that bottom six, so he can roll his top two lines as much as he wants, knowing that he can fall back on these guys. So, of course, it's important, but hey, listen, he said John Cooper's... At this point, John Cooper has the edge in the coaching because he's got the cups. He's got the rings to prove it.
The whole thing before was Cooper has the experience and Keefe doesn't, but that's changed now, right? Sheldon Keefe has the experience, and look, he's not afraid to change things that are working. Look at the power play. He's taking Nylander off that top power play, and he's throwing O'Reilly in there.
The number
right?
2 ranked power play.
Yeah, which that's also a concern, by the way.
I believe that a coach's most effect is done before the game starts. The practice and the preparation there, the X's and O's. When you get out to the game, it's happening in such a fluid way in hockey that look, they get last change. So, okay, great. They have last change. He decides to put Matthews out against the fourth line. That fourth line has a string ripping them back to the bench the second they get an opportunity. It's not like you can really manipulate a lot in game, but in between games is when it's going to be really important.
Yeah, and it's what happens with the top six, right? What's he going to do there? O'Reilly, Tavares, that whole thing,
And there's going to be injuries too, so you got to know how to reshuffle, rejuggle, and reload, and make sure that every game you have the best opportunity to win.
Yeah, quick picks around the table for tonight. Leafs, Lightning.
Leafs.
I'll go with the Leafs.
I picked Leafs in 4, so Leafs.
Oh, yeah. I'm going to go Lightning. You got to be different. All right. Bobby Conway, Bet99, thank you so much. Coming up after the break, we're going to wrap up the show. We got a couple of videos for you, including snooker for James.